Hello everyone, this is Abigail Borello with Sparkle and Shine Guidance, and I am talking to you today only about one thing, one very important thing that only happens every 2 years, and it is Mars going retrograde in Aries, a fire sign. And very fitting, as I lit my candle for today's reading, I lit my pants on fire as well, and that really hurt. And that's just a little bit to show you how, if something's going to get burned, if you're going to light a fire, you're probably going to burn yourself. So to really learn some ways to calm and soothe during this time is really helpful. So we have Mars retrograde all the way till November 13th. And we want to know where this is retrograding in your birth chart. So if you don't already know the house placement for your birth chart, it's a great time to set up a reading with me. I did reopen readings. I had to take a little break, but I'm back doing astrological chart readings. I just kind of designed them a little bit different now. So if you want to set up a chart reading with me, you can still do so. Just reach out to me. So today we're talking about Mars retrograde. And we're going to go through the whole house system here. So first I want to talk about the natural placement of Aries in the birth chart. Now, some people really don't like aligning the houses with astrological signs. Everybody has their own way of doing things. For me personally, Aries is the eastern direction of the chart. It is the rising. It is the crowning process as we come into consciousness. I often say it's our aura and our initiation into the world. So we say that children typically for the first 7 years display more of their rising sign than they do their own sun sign because they're still coming into that. And this kind of childhood representation of Aries is very important when we're thinking about what we came here to do, the work we came here to do, who we came here to be. So let's start with just a little bit about Mars and a little bit about Aries before I go into the houses. Mars is the first sign in the zodiac. It is the initiator. It is action-oriented. It says act and think later. It rules the head, and you'll often find people who have a lot of Aries placements or a lot of Aries, or they're going through an Aries transition time, end up bumping their head a lot or getting head injuries, or just in general get into things because of the head. So Aries is a fire sign. It is a cardinal fire. So it's the start of the zodiac cycle, right? And so that spark of life, that spark of what brings us all into consciousness, right? If you're just joining me, I'm talking about Mars and Aries and how it's retrograding right now. It only happens every 2 years, so it's a very important time, and it will be happening until November. So looking at where Aries is in your chart is going to be super important. And so Aries is that cardinal fire, the start, the spark of life. Mars rules Aries. So to have Mars and its rulership as it's going retrograde is a very important thing for us all to keep in mind, because Mars is the warrior and wants to go to war. When Mars is retrograding in Aries, since Aries has to do with the self and initiating, it can be where we're at war with ourselves. It can be where we're starting to look at how we've held ourselves back in the past and to be able to rework with that. So some of the things about Mars is, again, our bodies and how we move our bodies forward. Since it is very connected to Aries, it's going to have a lot of similarities. And so that means it's double emphasized. So when we're going through this retrograde, it's really going to be about our physical body, also our desires, and more how we act on those desires. Our desires are more Venusian, but how we act on those desires is Mars. And Mars is also about how we move forward in the world. So if we're thinking about it being our bodies, if we're thinking about it being acting on our desires, it's also how we make actions in our life, how we take action and where we take action in our life. So look at where your natural placement of Mars is. Something that's really interesting to see is if this Mars retrograde is squaring or opposing or conjuncting your own natal Mars, it's going to have even more of an influence, right? So Mars is the ruler of Aries, and Mars is now retrograde in Aries, and this shows us a lot about our own warrior, our own way of activating our warrior. We often say that anytime we're in a retrograde that we're redoing or reacting on things. And that's especially true for Mars, because Mars is our action-oriented planet. It's the divine masculine principle. It can be the lower level masculine when we think about going to war. But since it's in Aries, this is a war with the self and figuring out ways to make peace within ourselves. I can't tell you how many people that I'm working with on a one-on-one basis who are dealing with these themes of healing inner child wounds, healing triggering, and also making peace with themselves so that they can make peace with the people around them. There's also an eagerness to like a rebirthing process that's happening, because Mars rules that action, and Aries is the child and that curiosity. So Mars retrograding in Aries, as I said, if you're just joining me, it happens only every 2 years, and then it's in different signs. So this is really unique that we're having a retrograde in Mars, of Mars in Aries. This is very unique, and you want to pay attention to this and where it's happening for you. Okay, and this happens all the way till November 13th. So that's all being said, I want to go through each. There's a couple more things actually I wrote down. So we're doing the rework. When something is retrograde, we're redoing. We're re-evaluating. We're revealing for ourselves. A lot of people are having shifts in consciousness, awakenings in consciousness to things in their life that they hadn't seen before. And it's super exciting, but it also can be a little bit frightening. And that's what I'm here for. I work with people all the time on this, either through intuitive healing work or through your chart, your astrological chart. So we're revealing parts of ourselves to ourselves, and of course to the people closest to us. We're reworking boundaries. We're reworking how we move forward in ways that we've held ourselves back in the past. A lot of this is based on triggering or shadow work that we need to do in order to move forward, the ways that we unconsciously or subconsciously hold ourselves back from moving forward in our life. We're reawakening our individual right to be here and to be a light. We're reworking that, and we're reawakening our birthright to shine and to be this bright light, right? And regardless of what's happening in the external world, we're starting to recognize and acknowledge our own individual aura and our own individual gifts that we have to share. And this goes back to the basis of my work being about self-actualization and recognizing your strengths and focusing on those, as opposed to comparing yourself to others and trying to do everything the way others are doing things. This is the awakening process that we're in, is really looking at each individual's gifts and benefits. And one way to look at this, there's many, is to look at one, your part of fortune in your birth chart, your sun, house, and placement, and then also your north node, house, and placement, and any aspects it makes in your birth chart. Okay, so there's so many ways to look at this, and I love doing it with people. So if that's something you want to do, please reach out. Your aliveness, like in your day-to-day life, reworking how much you feel that liveliness and excitement in your life and ways to re-spark that. It's an activation for sure, and your eagerness to be with your life and to be in your life story, as opposed to just making it through or trudging through. This is the spiritual warrior aspect of the zodiac, Mars and Aries. Okay, this says I am that I am. And this really gets into some really deeper, we think of Aries sometimes as just action oriented, go get them, but it really has to do with the deepest fundamental spiritual right that we all have to be here and be who we are. So knowing who you are is going to be a huge gift during this time, and to really be okay with things that come up that show you who you are and show you who you're not, because that's also pretty difficult sometimes to see who you are not anymore and how that does or doesn't align with the people in your life, right? Okay, so we're going to go through each one of the houses right now and give a little bit more. So we're going to start with the first house. And so if you have Mars retrograding in your first house, so Aries is in your first house. And I should have gotten exact degrees, but I think this is around, well, I know it starts at 28 degrees of Aries and goes, I think, down to 15, but Don't quote me on that exactly, but you want to know about where that is happening in your birth chart. So the first card is for first house. So if you don't know your house placements, again, this is the time to schedule or get a birth chart reading with me. If you've already had a birth chart reading with me, break out that chart. If you don't have it, contact me. I'll get it to you again. Break out that chart and look at where the sign for Aries is. If you don't know what that looks like, it's really easy to Google the symbols in astrology, or if you have my planetary planner, which pre-sales are up right now for the 2021 planetary planner. The price is it's through the link in my profile, and it includes US shipping. So if you live internationally, that's a little bit more, but definitely check out that planner because it shows you all the symbols in astrology and then any transits like this retrograde and different things like that. Okay, first house. This is the first card, but I'm going to do them together because I'm doing 2 cards per house. So this is first house. If you have Aries, Mars retrograding in Aries in your first house, ooh, I like this. This is powerful because the first house is the I am house. It's our physical appearance, who we are, and this is the 4 of bows. It is about celebration and celebrating who you are and who you came here to be, kind of exactly like I was telling you. And if you can do that and be in alignment with that, there is a reward. And so as you see her holding the dove, it's like really respecting and honoring the gifts that you came here to share with others and to share with yourself, of course, and how when you're in that energy, how that gifts the people around you and also gifts yourself with this really celebratory energy. So this Mars retrograde, if you have this in your first house, is about really getting into the celebration of who you are and what you came here to be, and also really being aware of the rewards from being in that energy versus only looking at kind of what it feels like to not be in that energy. So second house, if you have Mars retrograding in your second house, ooh, okay, so second house has to do with your personal resources, your personal boundaries. It's also like what you have and when we know something's retrograding, what needs to be reworked in this area. So with the second house, ooh, I'm like, ooh, I like these cards. So this is reminding you of healthy eating, which is really good for second house, Mars in the second house, because this has to do with really being aware of the resources you have and how much better you feel when you're eating healthy, when you're putting the right things in your body. And since this has to do with Saint Raphael, the Archangel Saint Raphael, this is also about how you can, again, like when you're thinking of resourcefulness, how you can tap into your resourcefulness by being in your full health in your body, in your mind, and your spirit, but especially in your body, and especially in your mental health, so that you have more to teach others. Because when you see Archangel Raphael, he's saying like the teacher, the throat chakra, which really aligns with the second house in astrology. And the other card is the forest lovers. And so this is talking about how that balance between your masculine and feminine and really being in a peaceful place. Both of them have their hands on their heart. They're tuning into their emotions. And this is also a reminder to not emotionally overeat or emotionally unhealthfully eat or restrict eating because you're not in alignment with what your body and your mind and your spirit really need. So that balance and that awareness of your health for Mars retrograding in the second house is really important. Okay, Mars retrograding in your third house. The third house is the house of your close neighborhood, your close friendships, your siblings, your cousins, your if you're in school, your school surroundings. Oh my gosh, got the reward card again. There's some reward coming. And then the third house also has to do with communication. It has to do with, what you're reading, what you're writing, that kind of thing. And, no, that didn't feel right. So third house, ooh, okay. This is really interesting. So remember, when something's retrograding, it's what you're learning on the internal. And so if you have Mars retrograding in your third house, again, look at your chart, see where Mars in Aries is retrograding through your chart. And this has to do with the 2 of Arrows. It's the injustice card. But as you can see, there is a rebalance happening. This is another like rebalance card. But the balance is happening through turning off to the outside world, turning off to all of the noise and all of the chatter. And otherwise, if that doesn't happen, then there is that feeling of injustice. So it's like tuning in, going within, and that's where the reward is. So with the third house, this might be, again, resetting some boundaries with people closest to you, and really not paying attention. It might seem like you're not being responsible if you're not paying attention to all the chatter and all the noise that's happening around you, but you're actually doing really well for yourself, because right now it's about going within for this Mars in Aries retrograde season until November 13th. Then you can open your eyes and look at what's going on in the world around you. Otherwise, it's best to just stay tuned into the internal. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the fourth house. If you have Mars retrograding in the fourth house in your chart, this is about forgiveness, which is very fitting. The fourth house is our foundation. It's where we come from. It's our connection with our maternal lineage. And it can also be around, depending on if you have, you know, Aries here, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Mars in Aries. This can also have to do with your childhood and any wounds that are coming up around forgiveness, needing to forgive yourself, needing to forgive others. And this is a skill. This is a skill that we, hold on, I'll get to your question in just a second. So this is a skill that we need to develop, is getting into the place of forgiveness. But, you know, there's this whole, like, the spiritual bypassing way of looking at forgiveness that we just like forgive and forget. And there's a different way of looking at forgiveness where it's just about allowing yourself to feel the emotions, allowing yourself to feel whatever anger, frustration, hurt, pain that's there to be felt, and then experiencing personal freedom through forgiving and kind of allowing space. This is Mary Magdalene too, which is a lot about forgiveness of the outside world and our family. Because if you know much about Mary Magdalene and her whole story, like the way that it's portrayed through popular, you know, religious or quote unquote historical perspectives versus what other accounts say about Mary Magdalene and kind of more esoteric ways of looking at Mary Magdalene, you'll know that, you know, she was pretty ostracized or, you know, not accepted. And so there is this feeling of being the black sheep. That's something with Aries in the fourth house that can happen. And it really takes developing skill, new skills around emotional freedom and emotional security within yourself, regardless of the people around you, especially your family of origin. And this would be a great time to do some healing work, having this placement, having this happening in your fourth house. And that's something that I do. So if you want to reach out and schedule a session with me, that'd be great. Someone has a question. When you say where Mars and Aries is transiting in our chart, am I looking where Aries or Mars is placed in the birth chart? So we're looking at Aries. We're looking at Aries and where Aries is in your birth chart. So Aries is going to be in one of the 12 houses, and we're looking at the end degrees of Aries. So 28 to 15 degrees of Aries. So now we're moving on to the fifth house in astrology. If you have Mars and Aries retrograding in your fifth house, focus, really getting into a place of not quite acting yet, but getting in a place of planning and ideas. This is very much aligned with the fifth house being about creativity and creation energy. This could also have to be, blessings of abundance. So if you can get into a place of focus, really fine-tuning what I like to do is understanding what lack of focus looks like, feels like, and what is it the shadow of that lack of focus. And then from there, you can understand what needs to be focused on and the things that hold you back from that focus. And once you can clear those things, then you're unstoppable. I love the dogs or wolves in this image as well, because it's like showing you that you have support from the other side, showing you that you have a lot of support behind you. Fifth house is about creation, creativity, but it's also about hobbies. And so this might be a time where tapping into one of your hobbies can bring blessings of abundance. And so really, again, she's kind of looking within, and this is also like she's got her eye on the future, but she's also got to kind of tap into what's most important in terms of creation and really focusing so that the next few months can be a time of abundance. So that looks really positive if you have Mars in the 5th house. So I'm talking about just right now as a transit, and that would be through looking at where Aries is in your birth chart. Now we're moving on to the 6th house. And the 6th house, if you have Mars in the 6th house, this is a little bit more of a time to really dig in and do some work around where you felt exploited before. The 6th house has to do with service. It's Virgo's house, and it can also be where we get into servitude, over-serving. It is the house, like we used to say, the house of slavery. You know, some of us have planets and placements here, which doesn't mean that we all tap into that energy. It just means it's one of the possibilities. And with this card, it's showing the work is to get out of servitude. The work is to, you can be an activist, Mother Teresa, without exploiting yourself. And there could be a big push right now to like help the world or help what's going on. But if you're doing it from a place of lack or fear, it's not going to land. And so it's really from a place of love and unconditional love that it needs to come from. I want one more card because this, to me, I want to know what the focus during this retrograde should be for 6th housers. So we see what the issue is and what they're working through. Their own happiness, and that's kind of what I was saying. So it's just another affirmation of that, which sounds so easy, and it's about emotions and looking at the need to want to serve and how to first, I talked about this in one of my posts recently about how to serve the self first and let it come from that place of the cup overflowing, which is very much about this card, is about like tapping into your inner resources, inner happiness, and don't come from a place of lack to try and help others. Come from a place of fulfillment to help others. And the activist card is just reminding you, yes, you are an activist, but that doesn't mean you need to be going all the time. And if you're having trouble finding Aries in your birth chart, I do have a free widget on my webpage that pulls up your birth chart and will show you where Aries is in your birth chart. It's also a great indication to get, if you haven't had a chart reading, to get a chart reading so that you have it and you understand more, especially during this time since Mars only retrogrades every 2 years. So it's a great time to get a birth chart reading. But you should be able to find this just through any free, you can go to astro.com or Cafe Astrology. I mean, there's so many places, and you need your birth time, your birth place, and your birth date, and then you can look at where Aries is. And Aries is in all of our charts in one of the 12 houses, and you can just look and see where that is. And we're looking at 28 degrees to 15 degrees of, I'm going to try to say, yes, I'm going to save this video, of course. Nothing's going to get in my way. We're talking about 7th house now. Aries in the 7th house. Ooh, this is the waters of life. The Ace of Vessels, which again is about emotional health and emotional well-being. And the waters of life are kind of like the primordial waters or the amniotic fluid. We think of like this well, this source that we can tap into. When you have Aries in the 7th house, it's opposite. So the 7th house is the house of partnership. It's the house of, balance and marriage. And having Aries there is kind of, it's something to work with because Aries is about the self and developing the self. And so you might be someone who develops the self through partnership. So it's something to look at, if you're in a partnership, if you're not, that might be something that's really important to you. It might calm or quell a lot of the emotional insecurities that come up. Or time to get some pets. So St. Francis of Assisi, there's a great prayer by him. I love the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. I used to say it all the time when I was a kid, and it has to do with animals. We have three white feathery things, and so that's about purity. The white birds are about purity and purification, so there's a lot of purification happening. So if you are in partnership, this might be a good time to get a pet or to really look at any issues that are kind of coming up for you that hold you back from connecting with others or connecting with a partner. If there is some fear or if there is some subconscious shadow work to be done around partnership, that could be a great time to do that. So 8th house now, if you have Aries in your 8th house. This is the house of Scorpio. It's a water house. So the work here with the retrograde is around, going above and beyond, and really seeing what guidance outside of yourself, because 8th house is other people and other people's resources. 2nd house is personal resources, what you have, and 8th house is how we can access resources through others. And this isn't in a negative way. This is in a way of alchemy and connection. So this is really, the pole star is about kind of being guided by external forces, and of course this is what feels right and good to you around that. And oh my gosh, I love the card that goes with this. So heaven is watching over you. It's the guardian angel. And so I just love this because it's like maybe those external resources come from the divine, come from a different place than what you're expecting, and that when you can tap into a meditation practice, a spiritual practice, or it could be like yoga or physical activity that connects you in with those external resources and to divine consciousness, divine insight, it's going to be really helpful. And there can be some frustrations coming up around that. So this might be a time to work with, these blocks that you have to connecting to external resources. So if you have Aries in the 9th house, so that means Mars will be retrograding here until November, and the insight or guidance for this placement is the wheel. Though it's like the weaving of the wheel. It's reworking and reteaching yourself ways of being with the cycles of the earth, being with the cycles of the planet, being with the cycles of relating to others and connection to others. And let's see, this, I didn't like that. I already pulled some, I'm having some repeat. That was like the healthy eating again. Oh, okay. This is tapping into the sweetness of life. So if you have the 9th house too, you should probably eat healthy, but I feel like I wanted a little bit more. So this is really being aware of where you've restricted yourself off from the sweetness of life, where you've kind of plucked yourself off. And this is a realignment, a reawakening with the things that bring you pleasure and sweetness, so that you can reweave a new story. The 9th house is how we learn and expand our minds, and it's also how we teach others, but we can't lead anyone else where we haven't gone ourselves, right? And so it's all about reworking some of that rewiring, and working with the sweetness of life. So I really think that is fitting for the 9th house. In the 10th house, if you have Aries in the 10th house, this card wanted to come through, instruction. This is the 10 of arrows, and this is really about, again, that focus, but also how you can share with others and how that's going to strengthen your own feeling of purposefulness and your work in the world, because 10th house is our work in the world. And there can be something about like the actual like teaching people from a physical place, like so teaching a sport or teaching, this is like literally, teaching an action. So that can be up if you have Aries in the 10th house. Okay, I paused. I hope it comes back on. I got another animals, so this could also have to do with animals. I'm gonna pull another one because I keep getting repeat cards. Okay, focusing on your healing so that you can show up for others, and also helping others heal by teaching, right? Because when we're teaching, we are both the teacher and the student. And there is also something about the 10th house, because it is a cardinal house, and this is Aries is a cardinal sign, that is initiating or starting a new way of teaching or instructing yourself through that healing that you do. I'm getting lots of pauses. I hope this saves. So 11th house. Woo! 11th house. If you have Aries here, this is the mirror card, and it's very much about just that deep well of wisdom and intuition. And so if you have Aries in your 11th house, which has to do with the larger community, looking at how you connect into the collective consciousness through your own awareness and actions in your life and your own vision. So, you know, I think, dear, I don't know how positive it is if you have this in your 11th house, but it really makes, if you do, it really makes sense around like using art or using writing or using a tool to connect and share from that deep internal well of that collective consciousness, sharing your vision and really being about reworking the vision. If you've noticed you've gotten in a place of fear, or if you've noticed you've gotten in a place of not having hope for the future, this is a time with Mars retrograding in Aries where it's re-initiating and re-evaluating and reactivating and ascending and kind of rising above so that you can share a vision of hope and whatever else, peace, creativity with the world. So this is really powerful. Could be through a lot of different ways, but I know you work with art, but it could be through so many different ways with the 11th house. So 12th house. Oh my goodness. Looking at jealousy. This is really interesting. I'm going to pull another card because this card is interesting. It's a 3 of arrows. So we got lots of arrows with this, which makes sense because Mars in Aries is so direct action, and when it's retrograde, the direct action is happening internally. And so looking at where, you know, jealousy is an emotion, but it often hides another emotion of feeling hurt or feeling abandoned, or, you know, there's so many things in there. And so with Mars going through the 12th house, it's not an easy transit, I'll just say that. And it has to do with, the 12th house is very much about the psychic. It's about past life experiences. It can be past hidden enemies. It can be in your own consciousness. It can be in your own awareness. So where is jealousy holding you back from, you know, all the good stuff, and how to really sit with that and look at what the deeper emotions are around that. This is really interesting for the 12th house. Sleep. Rest is going to be really helpful right now to deal with this retrograde happening in your 12th house. I also think dream work and keeping a dream journal by your bed is going to be very helpful, since Mars has to do with the body and moving the body forward. And when it's retrograde, it's kind of reevaluating, relooking at things. The dream work that you do during this time is going to be really important, especially if you have Mars in the 12th house, or if you have this trining your 12th house, you know, or squaring your 12th, you know, so look at those things too. But most importantly, if you have Mars in the 12th house, and through that dream work, you might do a lot of healing work and a lot of shadow work around where you felt jealousy, since the 12th house has to do with that time that you are still in the womb. It could be around, you know, working with the mother, working with father, that kind of thing can be really helpful during this time. Any kind of issues with your parents that happened when you were still in your parents' still in your mom's belly. I mean, you did also spend some time in your dad's. Okay, this is another sign for rest and dream work. So and the arrows again, which is, you know, it's interesting because the arrows have to do with action. The arrows have to do with air, the element of air and action. But right now, the action is all on the internal and the healing work that needs to happen to really take off and move forward, come towards the end of November and beginning of December. Okay, thank you guys so much for joining me. Again, if you want to schedule a chart reading or an intuitive healing session, you can do so through the link in my profile. And please check out my other videos if you're interested in the astrology that's happening currently. Have a great day.